Welcome back to Cozy English Corner. I am looking out the window here in Columbus, Ohio, and the sky cannot decide if it wants to rain, snow, or suddenly become sunny. That is Midwestern weather for you.
It really is. I had to wear a heavy winter coat this morning, but I will probably need a light sweater by the afternoon. Thank you for having me, Alex.
I am so glad you are here, Clara. Today, we are discussing a topic that goes far beyond simple grammar. It is a single letter difference that completely changes how native speakers perceive your English level. We are talking about the difference between if I have and if I had. And honestly, this is not just about passing a test. It is about how we express our deepest hopes and our heaviest regrets.
I understand that completely. When I first moved to the U.S. and opened my small bakery here in Columbus, I mixed these two up all the time. I did not realize that I was sending completely the wrong message to the people I spoke with.
Tell me more about that. What was happening in your life when you were making this mistake?
Well, running a small business is terrifying. There were nights I could not sleep because I was so worried about credit card debt. I would tell my friends, if I have $1 million, I would pay off everything.
And native speakers notice that immediately. You combined have from the first conditional with would from the second conditional. It sounds slightly broken, but more importantly, the listener gets confused about your actual reality.
Exactly. I was trying to express a deeply painful, impossible fantasy, wishing I was suddenly rich to escape my financial stress. But because I used if I have, it sounded like a casual, real plan. Like I might actually find $1 million in my pocket tomorrow.
That is a brilliant way to explain it. If I have is the language of reality and planning. We call it the first conditional. If I have time tomorrow, I will call you. It means it is truly possible.
Yes, it shows hope. When I say, if I have enough customers this weekend, I will pay my rent, that is survival. That is a real possibility that keeps me waking up and opening my store every day.
But if I had, the second conditional, is the language of distance. It describes a reality that does not exist right now. If I had $1 million, I would travel the world. It means right now, I am sitting here without that money.
And that brings up a heavy feeling. When I say, if I had more time, I would visit my parents back home, there is a quiet sadness in that sentence. It is an admission that my life is too busy, and I am missing out.
I feel that. That is the unseen pain behind these grammar structures. Many adult learners are dealing with aging, financial pressure, or being far from family. When you misuse these forms, you hide your actual emotional state from the person listening. I read a fascinating study recently about something called counterfactual thinking. Psychologists look at how our brains process these what-if scenarios.
Wait, really? There is a psychological impact to using these grammar structures?
Yes. Research shows that constantly thinking in the second conditional, wishing for things you do not have, can actually trigger stress hormones. Your brain recognizes a lack of resources. It focuses on the gap between your reality and your desires.
That makes complete sense to me. When I used to sit in my empty bakery and think, if I had a better location, I would have more customers, I felt defeated. I felt physically exhausted.
But when you shift to the first conditional, the brain activates the prefrontal cortex. That is the area responsible for planning and action. So saying, if I have a good sale tomorrow, I will invest in better marketing, creates forward momentum.
Grammar is basically psychology in disguise. I never thought about it that way. I always just viewed it as a set of frustrating rules I had to memorize.
Guiding, structured. It truly is. Language reveals how we process our existence. Let us break down the structure clearly so our listeners never make this mistake again. Clara, how do you construct a real, possible sentence?
For a real possibility, I use if plus the present simple tense, and then will plus the base verb, like, if I have enough flour, I will bake extra bread for the morning rush.
Perfect. Now, what is something that trips a lot of people up with the imaginary situation? The second conditional.
Oh, the past tense. You say, if I had, which looks like the past, but you are actually talking about right now. That completely confused me for years.
That is the hardest part for English learners to accept. The past tense form here does not mean past time. It means unreality. It signals to the listener, I am taking a step back from reality.
So when I say, if I had a bigger car, I would drive my friends to the Ohio State football game, I am not talking about last year. I am talking about right now, acknowledging that my current car is too small.
Exactly. And speaking of Ohio State games, traffic on Lane Avenue is terrible on game days, which brings me to a great local example. If I have time, I will avoid the highway. Real possibility.
Versus, if I had a helicopter, I would fly right over the traffic. Imaginary, unless you are keeping a secret from me, Alex.
I assure you, on a podcast host salary, I do not own a helicopter. But that perfectly illustrates the difference. Now, let us talk about the most common mistake, especially for speakers of Romance languages.
You mean putting would inside the if part of the sentence? I used to do that all the time. I would say, if I would have a better oven, my bread would bake faster.
Yes, that is the one. In standard American English, we do not put would next to if. It is always, if I had a better oven, my bread would bake faster. You keep would in the second half, the result clause.
It sounds heavy when you realize what people are actually communicating. Someone complaining about their job might say, if I had a degree, I would quit tomorrow. They are carrying the weight of not having that degree every single day.
That is deeply true. This grammar point exposes our insecurities. If I were younger, if I were richer, if I had more support. Notice I just used were instead of was.
Confirming, knowledgeable. Right, if I were you. Even though I usually takes was, in these imaginary situations, standard English uses were. It feels a bit formal, but it is the correct way.
People often use was in casual conversation. You will hear native speakers in Ohio say, if I was you at the grocery store. But in a professional setting or when writing, if I were you is expected.
I have noticed Midwesterners are incredibly friendly, so they overlook grammar mistakes easily. When I first opened my shop, people in Columbus were so patient with my broken English, but as a business owner, I wanted to sound professional. I did not want them to just be patient. I wanted to be clear.
And clarity is power. Let us do a quick test for the listeners. I will give a situation, and you tell me if it is first or second conditional. Ready?
I am ready. Lay it on me.
Okay, situation 1. You are waiting for an email from a client. You are checking your phone. You say, if I get the email today, I will process the order.
That is a real possibility. The email might actually arrive. So that is the first conditional. If I get and I will process.
Spot on. Situation 2. You are looking at a commercial building downtown that costs $2 million. You sigh and say to your husband, if we owned that building, we would open a massive restaurant.
That is an imaginary situation. I do not have $2 million, so it is the second conditional. If we owned and we would open, it is purely a dream.
Exactly. You felt the sigh in that sentence. If we owned that building. It carries a specific emotional weight.
It really does. Alex, what about advice? Like when people say, if I were you...
Great question. Giving advice is almost always the second conditional because it is hypothetical. I am not you. Therefore, my statement is imaginary. If I were you, I would take the job.
That makes sense. You cannot say, if I am you, I will take the job. That sounds absurd. It implies you might physically transform into the other person.
Precisely. Now, we have covered a lot today, and I want to make sure the listeners feel encouraged. If you mess this up, the world will not end.
No, it will not. I survived years of mixing them up while running my business. People still bought my bread. They still understood my general point.
But as you noted earlier, getting this right elevates your communication. It allows you to share your genuine reality, your fears, your regrets, and your solid plans with accuracy.
It is about connection. When I finally learned how to express my true situation using the right conditional, I felt more understood by my American friends. I did not feel like a foreigner just throwing words together anymore.
That is the ultimate goal of learning any language, to be truly known by others. Before we wrap up, I want to challenge our listeners right now. I want you to think about one real plan you have for this week, and one thing you deeply wish you could change. Construct 2 sentences in your mind.
For example, if I have time this evening, I will practice my English. That is your real plan. It is entirely possible.
And for the wish, if I had more confidence, I would speak to native speakers without fear. That acknowledges your current struggle, but puts words to your desire.
Please write those sentences in the comments. Putting them into the world helps solidify the grammar, but it also helps build community. We all have dreams, and we all have realities we are working through.
Thank you, Clara, for being so open about your journey as a business owner and your struggles with this. Your insights made this grammar lesson deeply human.
It was my pleasure, Alex. If I have the chance, I will definitely come back for another episode.
I see what you did there. First conditional, real possibility. And yes, you absolutely will. Thank you all for joining us at Cozy English Corner. Keep practicing, be kind to yourself, and we will see you next time.